Hey everybody, I'm Michael. This is a review for Mr. Darcy Takes a Wife. So this is a sequel to Pride and Prejudice, one of the dozens of sequels to Pride and Prejudice. I was told to get this one because it's really popular, and whoo boy, this book. So this is I'm trying to find a delicate way to describe this book without getting dirty because it's a dirty novel. This is definitely for adults. A bunch of reviewers call it smut. I would go a step further. I'd say it's porn. It's just really pornographic, at least for the first part of the book. So what, 150 pages? It is just Darcy and Elizabeth doing things to each other. That's it. They just do it over and over and over and over and over again. That's all. There's like no story whatsoever. There's a little bit of story. We get some backstory on Darcy because he apparently is the sexiest man alive. And so he was just perfect at doing adult activities from the age of like 15. Like, gosh, I wish I could describe it, but I don't want this video to get flagged for having inappropriate adult content, so I'm not going to describe it, but let's just say his first encounter with a woman is so unbelievable that no one would believe it. It's just, ugh. Anyway, so, yeah, that's it. I mean, there are some funny parts, like Lydia tries to prepare her sisters, telling them what's going to happen on their wedding night, and they are both horrified. And of course, Lydia doesn't like telling the truth, and she just likes over exaggerating. So it's silly. There's some silly jokes. Silly jokes with Mr. Collins, too. Man, the author hates Mr. Collins, like, a lot. Jeez. There was one funny scene where Mr. Collins comes up with a bunch of stories. Apparently, he likes writing novels about himself, basically, and that was funny. We just get to read a description of some of the silly novels he's created, but Mr. Collins gets like murdered, and he doesn't. No, he gets murdered. So they go hunting, and there's a bunch of jokes that Mr. Collins too much of an idiot to be able to ride a horse, and he like accidentally fires his gun right next to Mr. Darcy, falls off and dies. And yeah, it's kind of a grim way for Mr. Collins to die. And yeah, his wife is totally fine with it. She's like, "Hey, I already have a kid. I'm happy now." And the book is kind of cruel to the poor Collins kid too. Jeez, and Mr. Bingley too. Mr. Bingley, I thought Mr. Bingley is a nice guy, but this book kind of rips on him in terms of adult activities. Like, I didn't know that. Book also does a lot of ripping on Mr. Wickham, but that is par for the course for Pride and Prejudice sequels. Mr. Wickham is a terrible, terrible person. And just like in Pride and Prejudice, he's always trying to get a new girlfriend and do adult activities with her. So he's always trying to cheat on his wife constantly throughout this book. And Lydia and him, they just are not happy. They have a very sad relationship. So, something else I wanted to mention is just the author's writing style. It's okay, but I also don't like it. So the author tries to describe all these adult activities in Victorian terms, trying to make it sound like 1800s English, and it doesn't quite work. So the author's really fond of like doing two words in italics to I don't know what language, like French or Latin. So she'd be like, "Oh no, Mr. Darcy stole the puditatis femininum of his wife." Yeah, and the author also does a lot of like old-fashioned words. So complete is spelled with an A because that's how it was spelled a long time ago. But it shows up at least 50 times, 100 times in this book, like 50 to 100 times. That's how often it shows up. It's like, I get it. I get the point. You're trying to write in old-fashioned style. Stop using the word complete. And also albeit and howbeit. So it feels like the author just wrote the book normally and then did copy replace with however becomes howbeit, and although becomes albeit. Albeit that doesn't work every single time. You know, Somebody take. I saw one reviewer say, "Somebody take her dictionary away, her thesaurus away. Take the thesaurus away." I would agree, to a minor extent. I'd say like about, say like a third of the unnecessarily large vocabulary could have been cut. Yeah, that's me. The second part of the book. Oh, forgot to mention the villain. There's a villain named Tom Reed. It's weird. This book kind of, the author likes giving extremely long backstories for characters that aren't important. So we've got like, let's say about 10 or so different characters not from Pride and Prejudice who get pretty thorough backstories, and they're just kind of interspliced throughout the story. It's I'm sure it makes sense if I read this book again and I know how the characters all interact, but it's still kind of hard to keep track of the first time around. So our villain is Tom Reed, and he's a villainous guy who does villainous things. And let's see, he sets the horse barn on fire. He tries to trick this one boy. Well, he does trick this one boy into thinking that he's secretly Darcy's son. And he holds up the stagecoach. So he tries to rob the stagecoach and do terrible things to Elizabeth. But Darcy, he manages to show up in time. He straight up just takes his sword and murders Tom Reed, and then he murders his two associates. Yeah, this book has a death count. Mr. Darcy just murders a bunch of people. Let's see. There's a portrait guy who takes pictures. I mean, he does portraits, and somehow we needed 20 pages of backstory on this guy who did Elizabeth's portrait. They go to London for a season. So part two, you can kind of understand things kind of slow down in terms of the pornography elements, so we actually get story, but it's not like the story I really wanted to hear. I don't want to hear 20 pages about the portrait person, or they go to town and they meet some people there, and there's awkward moments because Elizabeth might meet Darcy's beautiful ex-girlfriends, all 500 of them, I'm guessing. We do get like at least 25 pages of backstory. No, I'd say more like 40 pages of backstory about his French girlfriend, who apparently he was dating at the time of Pride and Prejudice. So yeah, that's the thing that happened. And oh my gosh, yeah, Elizabeth, she gets pregnant and she miscarries, and Elizabeth also gets pregnant and has a stillborn. So she has two problems having children, and that causes a lot of problems with Darcy because the one guy is convinced he's secretly Darcy's son. So Darcy's like, well, my wife can't have any children now, and I have this guy who might be my son, and it causes drama like that. But one of the things I don't like about that drama is that he doesn't talk to his wife about it, even though he and his wife are very open and share pretty much everything together. Darcy, admittedly, it makes sense that he doesn't want to say, oh, I think I have a secret son, but still, it feels like they really should have talked more about the tragedy that, that she got pregnant twice and neither of the pregnancies ended in an actual live childbirth. That's pretty devastating. I feel like the book could have gone into that more. I just wanted them to talk to each other more about it rather than just kind of sulk by themselves individually. And let's see. The final third of the book is kind of weird. Again, just kind of weird. Georgiana runs away to France because she's in love with Colonel Fitzwilliam. When did that happen? And I'm expressing my confusion because just like 3 chapters earlier, Colonel Fitzwilliam declares that he loves Elizabeth very much and he wants to be with her. And this comes off the heels of Wickham making a similar confession because he's trying to seduce Elizabeth. Apparently all these guys are in love with her. So Fitzwilliam is horrified by her response because, he's basically propositioning his cousin's wife. So he decides to run away to France to fight Napoleon and just die in the war. That's what he wants to do. Oh, and Darcy's supposed son does the exact same thing. does the exact same thing. Well, Georgiana decides, hey, she's in love with the guy who tried to make out with her brother's wife, and she runs away to France to become a nurse for the war. And it's just weird because that's part three. That's the setup for part three. So part three is basically like a 9 months. Probably 9 months to a year because Elizabeth. That's the cliffhanger of part two. Is Elizabeth's pregnant again, but Darcy has run away to France. He wants to save his sister and his cousin, so he's in France for 9 months, and that's literally part two. So we've got like 120 or so pages of just him in France. He's got some French relatives he hangs out with, and of course his ex-girlfriend, the beautiful French ex-girlfriend, she's there too. So that causes more drama. And Elizabeth is sad at home because basically everyone she knows ran out on her. Yeah, it was kind of weird. Just Darcy's gone for so long and he's out of communication, and the only person who can send his communications back home is the French girlfriend. So of course they get a big dramatic scene where Elizabeth meets the French girlfriend. But the girlfriend's like, oh, you're so beautiful and your baby is so wonderful, because Elizabeth does in fact have a baby, and Darcy is overjoyed when he comes home to have the baby. And yeah, that's about it. I can't even remember what the big ending is. Let me see if I can find something about the ending. Darcy's supposed son dies. Oh, yes, and the evil George Wickham. So we're told he's probably Mr. Darcy's half-brother. And he kills Darcy's secret son, who is actually his own secret son, because Darcy and Wickham both had the same girlfriend without kind of knowing. I don't think Darcy knew. Wickham knew. He wasn't very happy that, this 15-year-old girl left him for Darcy. But, yeah, I'm getting distracted. Anyway, that's the sort of love drama which is in it. Like Darcy and Wickham. Oh man, who's the dad of the secret son? Is it Wickham or Darcy? Well, Mr. Darcy, of course, is amazing and wonderful and fantastic in everything he does. So no, he's not the father. He did not have a secret child. So we're told Wickham is the father, and Wickham in the war kills his secret son. He doesn't know it's his son, but he kills the guy so he can escape from the war. Wickham fakes his own death and leaves. That's what he does. The secret son catches him, Wickham kills him, and continues. So that's the end of the book. Wickham's still alive and probably going to do terrible, terrible, terrible things. And there's a sequel. There are 2 sequels. I think I might read the 2 sequels. I don't know. I'm told this is a really, really popular series, but as I said, it's just dirty. It's really dirty. Just a lot of smut. And all the reviews I've seen, they stop about 150 pages in. They only cover the first part of the book, which is all just pure smut. I'm not sure how many people continued reading on to review and talk about the second and third parts of the book. It is a big book. Geez, how many pages? 462 pages. So, yeah, I can understand why people would have not thoroughly read the entire thing. They probably, stopped reading once the dirty stuff stopped. There is dirty stuff in parts 2 and 3, right? But it's not them doing adult activities every single page. They slow down a bit in order to bring in the plot and, soap opera plot, I suppose. Like I said, there was the love drama, and yeah, well. Anyway, that's Mr. Darcy Takes a Wife. Hope you enjoyed my general review of the book. I hesitate to give this book a score, so I'm not gonna. Bye.